Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Sales TV. The first one back after the hiatus, which is very nice. And what a great place to start. Welcome, Chris. Lovely to have you on the show. So first of all, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and
Yep.
tell us where you've come from and how you've got here and a bit of background about you?
Sure, not a problem at all, Adam. It's going to be a long story, though. As you can see, I've been around the block a few times. Probably going to go back. Well, yeah, actually, 30 years this month. I started in a sales career and started in the B2C world, working across both automotive and financial services. So, kind of 5.5 years in that arena, and then moved into B2B world in 1994. Joining an organisation in the office equipment market. Worked my way through from sales executive up to team leader, and then in 1998 took my first assignment in a leadership role. Moved up to Scotland, managing my first team up there in Scotland, and then on to a regional role a couple of years later, which was essentially my first foray into managing managers. So managing people like myself who'd been managing teams up in Scotland, then across the northeast and northwest of England. In that role for about 4 years or so, then over to Canada as VP of Sales for the Canadian branch of the organisation. And originally a 3-year secondment, ended up being 4 years. Tempted back to the UK with all of the ego-stroking messages that you get. But yeah, came back to the UK and spent 10 years as the UK sales director. Moved on, had a bit of time at Toshiba Tech, looking after the indirect channel, and now I'm at Westfield Health. Joined there as the sales director. Um, oof, 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago now. Got my feet under the table, got known as having a little bit more about me, and now I'm the distribution director, which is a big fancy title for somebody who looks after the B2B sales engine and also runs one of the subsidiaries in its own right. So a bit more additional responsibility there. Yeah, so worked across direct channels, indirect channels, managed marketing teams, BI teams, sales enablement teams, sales support teams. So quite a mix across the 30 years to date.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on the show. And today you wanted to talk about leading learning in sales. And first of all, give us a bit of intro to what exactly do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of opening the door
Mm,
rather than leading. It's kind of opening the door for people to step through and allow people to go on a learning journey, keep the skills relevant, keep the knowledge up to date, and kind of have some fun along the way, trying out new things, experimenting with things, and yeah, just staying relevant. Really, getting that learning into so you're at the cutting edge of what's happening out there.
yeah, well, that's really interesting because obviously we were having a bit of a chat about that before we went live, and you were talking about relevance being a really big thing because often uh, you've been in a career for a long time, or the career has existed for a long time, and we run the risk of becoming dinosaurs, don't we? Well, when I
Indeed.
was a lad, we used to do it that way, and that's how you're going to do it because you're a lad now. And the idea of constantly trying to evolve and remain relevant and remain current is really crucial. So how do you encourage your guys and girls uh, to take up this training and open their minds to the idea of learning? Because I think that one of the challenges in our role as trainers of people, one of the challenges is there's a risk that people can fold their arms and say, "Well, I know how to do this." And so, how do you keep them hungry and open minded around this stuff?
Yeah, that is the $50 million question that everyone asks. How do you actually put this in place when people have been around for a long time? They're tenured, they're successful, the organization's been around for a long time. It's maybe a known solution, and it's about having lots and lots of conversations with customers in order to make your numbers. But if we were still, as I said at the beginning, my sales career goes back 30 years. if I was still coaching people, having conversations with people in sales techniques that worked for me 30 years ago, we just we wouldn't be relevant. Customers wouldn't want to see that. We need to communicate with them differently. We need to have different conversations when we're in front of a customer. And it's no longer just having that product knowledge information. Customers can get that online now. We don't bring that as sales professionals. What we really bring is a thought process, that challenging of thinking, the getting into the back of the head sort of questions that we ask. So showing people that the world has changed is a big part of it, and making people aware that we can't just keep doing what we're doing if we want to be successful moving forward. Showing people the different approaches that can work either in different industries, different sectors, different sales organizations, etc., that they can be successful, and then encouraging people to experiment, and not have that fear of getting it wrong.
Yeah. So have you? Uh, you're a hands-on kind of guy, so you model this behavior because like with your children, telling them something and doing something are two different things. So have you been a great exponent of this learning and trying new things and falling down and getting up again, to try to encourage them to do this?
Yeah, I was very lucky in my earlier career. I had a great manager, a mentor, and a coach who really set me on the track of that CPD journey. So yes, I've done some academic studies in the world of marketing, etc. But more importantly, in that, what he instilled in me was that need to constantly be learning, constantly be evolving, gaining greater skills, greater knowledge, etc. And that's something that I've just tried to share with all of the people in my teams throughout my career, not just salespeople, but people working in other functions as well. So sharing a podcast I've listened to which has been interesting, or something's come up in conversation from somebody. I thought, oh, I read about that in a book, and sharing the book with them. Or I've set up libraries in organizations before, just taking in my business books, put them on the shelf, and allowed them to take the books. As long as you return it, it's a lending library. It's not a it's not a freebie. As long as they're returned, then fine, and add to the collection as well. So just giving people that kind of permission, if you like, to pick up a book that they maybe haven't read, and think about the content in there. Inviting people onto webinars that I'm maybe attending because I think the subject matter is interesting. I could learn something. So sharing that invite across the group. It's just little things like that that just kind of show that you're leading learning, I guess, as we've titled this session.
Yeah. So do you have you found that sometimes it's quite difficult to get people um, to know that it's safe for them to do this stuff? Because sales, like every other role, you have your responsibilities and things you need to get done. You have to make your number, you have to do all of these different things, and actually in an increasingly complex and difficult world, it isn't as straightforward as that. Okay, here's your target, you need to go and achieve this year. Actually, I think the stats are that 75% of salespeople don't hit their target. So there is, in many organizations, there is a culture of, well, you can't be learning, you need to be out there selling. So how do you kind of manage that? How do you give people permission to kind of continue to develop themselves for the longer term benefit of both themselves and the business?
And I think that's the key there, Adam, for the longer term benefit of themselves and the business. And it's a piece of reverse engineering. So the results are an output. That's all they are. They're just an outcome of the process that's gone before.
Mm.
So the first thing you have to have in place is the correct process. Then you have to have consistency of application within the process. And then that notion of development and getting better and trying different things and different approaches, etc. So it's really important that within the organization, you respect the time that people are prepared to put aside and invest in for their own CPD. So having, for example, my calendar, Monday morning, 9 till 10 is blocked out for me to do my own personal CPD activities. Tuesday morning, Sales TV, getting on that, understanding what people are doing. So we give that permission within the business for people to invest in their own learning and development. Block out that time in your calendar, and get out of it what you need to get out of it in a self-directed way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I had another question here that Andy had already briefed me with. What part did psychological safety play in this process of giving the team permission to be able to do this stuff? But I see that we've got a really good question here from Neil, and I think that this is kind of part of what we were discussing earlier again. Yes, you want salespeople to remain relevant. Yes, they have to be, particularly with the case of ethics, as we discussed. Actually, we're not a good fit for you. You might be better off looking at a different supplier, or we can't provide exactly what it is that you're looking for. But then there is the commercial pressure which sits atop that. I'm just about going to make my number this quarter, but this is not a good fit. This is not going to be a happy customer. This is not going to reflect well on me or the business. You're my boss. How does this work? Okay, I can do the right thing and miss my target, or I can do the wrong thing and hit my target. So despite those coaching, how long do you give people in order to achieve what it is they need to achieve before ultimately they're an overhead and not an asset to the organization, I guess?
Yeah, I think to your first point, Adam, always do the right thing. Always do the right thing. The outcome will take care of itself if we keep doing the right things consistently and we have the correct process in place. But to your second point, how long is a piece of string? People get there at a different rate and need different things along the journey that we have to put in place. So those interventions, the point does come, and it's that point in my view where you can look yourself in the mirror and you can say, I've done everything I can possibly do. They've put in every effort they can put in. They've followed every piece of guidance that I've given them. We've given them every learning and development intervention possible. It's just not going to happen for this individual. And if you can go to bed at night having to have that conversation, but knowing that you've done everything you could possibly do, I guess that's where the time has come. That's where we need to draw that line.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know that there's no hard and fast rule about this, but it does seem often in sales like there's these two conflicting things, aren't there? So one of the things that we see quite a lot is that people are one of the KPIs that salespeople get is often how many calls do you have, or how many meetings do you have, or how many emails have you sent. So there's that kind of the velocity of those activities that they need to undertake, because those well, they're not anymore, but they have traditionally been a key performance indicator for the salesman's performance. And then at the other side of the coin, you've got how much stuff do you actually sell. So we often see those interesting paradoxes where you're my boss, I'm making my number, and then you're hauling me over the coals for not having sent enough emails. Or alternatively, I'm sending loads of emails and you're very happy with me despite the fact I'm not actually selling anything. So how do we blend these two things together? Because at the end of the day, if you're hiring me in a sales role, you're hiring me to achieve a delivery of revenue into the organization. And surely, if my way of delivering revenue is I get up at 11 o'clock in the morning, I have myself a glass of wine, I get on the train and go into London, I close a big deal, and then I come home again and have some more wine. That's up to me.
Okay, so we're stepping back 30 years ago now, are we, Adam?
Well, yeah, and that's a bit extreme, but you know what I mean.
I
Sometimes
do.
we do see that organisations that are floundering, and I think that you guys potentially are not in this situation because you've said about the importance of being relevant and new techniques and all of this kind of thing. But for organisations that are a long way from their target, they're floundering, looking for ways to drive out performance in sales.
Yeah.
So what I need from you, Chris, is for you to make more calls. Just get on the phone and make more calls. And
Okay.
actually, it's like you can't beat me with both ends of this stick.
Yeah. So we took the approach of building what we call a sales playbook. So everybody has a kind of sales manual, which we adopt, and that's our process and our ways of working. But we built that in a collaborative way. So we brought in the sales leaders and the sales consultants to help us to build that. And the overarching philosophy of it is this is what good looks like. So that will have KPIs in there, number of emails you need to send, number of calls you need to make, average order values, all of that good stuff, based on what the consultants are saying. This is what a week should look like, a month, a day, etc. But that's not what we manage people to. We're managing against the outputs. So some people
Mm.
may need to make 50 calls to get 2 sales. Some people maybe need to make 20 calls to get the same level of sales, same value, etc. And that's fine. People are different. They have a different approach to it. But if people are floundering, as you say, if people are struggling, that's the kind of Bible we can go to say, look, are you putting in this level of activity? Do your days, weeks, months look like this? If they don't, how do we make it look like this? How do we get you to that this is what good looks like situation that your fellow consultants have shared with us and helped us, put into a book for you?
Yeah, I mean that individualized playbook is a crucial thing that we've seen every time we work with an organization, because um, I think we're all, if we are failing to achieve what it is that we've set ourselves or has been set for us as objectives, the first and most natural thing to do is to look for excuses as to why that's the case. So you've given me this fantastic knowledge for me to go out to market, but actually that works for John because John's dealing with companies in Newcastle, but I'm dealing with companies in Southport, and therefore
Mm.
it's not relevant for me. And actually, part I think of this is about giving people, okay, this is what you need to do. So these are your accounts. This is the help you need to crack those accounts, that region, with your skill set and your personality profile. Behave this way, whereas this guy is entirely different, and he or she can do something different because they're a different person.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And then that comes to the outcome. But I think what happens too often is when people are looking at performance, they're looking at the here and now, and what am I not doing now that's impacting the performance, when this should be looking further back. What weren't you doing 3, 4, 5 months ago that's impacting the performance now? Because it's a we're not in the industry of quick wins, of quick sales, going in the morning, having the deal signed up by the afternoon. It's that long sales funnel that you have to work through. So really important that you have that consistency of applying the process and the correct steps and putting your learning into practice as you go through that process over a longer period.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and Peter's comment here about really interesting, kind of the contrast between setting a playbook, which is, I guess it's the way you've described it. It's not a rule book, is it? It's a manual to enable people to achieve what it is they need to achieve, but then measuring them based on what that's achieving for them.
Yeah, and it's a blueprint for success is the way we look at it. This is what the successful, the middle, and the lower ranking sales consultants have come up with. Of this is what good looks like, and it's only, to be honest, really needed when you first join in the organization. This is how things work around here. This is what we expect, our ways of working, etc. Or if the performance in a particular area or across the board isn't quite where it needs to be, you can go back the playbook, you can understand what you should be doing, because that's what good looks like, that's what the consultants have told us, and then put that into play to drive that performance forward. So it yeah, kind of signposting people along the way, and giving them that ownership and accountability for their own performance and their own delivery.
Yeah, because it from what you've been saying, lots of what you've done is offering up a buffet of things that people can do. So here's some webinars that you can visit. Come and join me on this thing. We're having an internal kind of role playing session. Here's a library that I've put together from books that everybody should read if they're in sales. Uh, but that requires a degree of uh, a degree of proactivity on the part of the salesperson, because I think what one of the challenges is, and I think this again is kind of further to Neil's point here, One of the challenges that salespeople have is that I want to invest in my long-term development so I can be more successful in the future. However, today I need to sell something. And these two things are often counterproductive, aren't they? So,
Mhm.
I need to invest in the future. I need to invest in myself so I can be more effective. But the sales team, the sales leader is on my back about what I'm actually selling today. So how do you help people balance those two elements?
It's about having that plan. Not everything will go to plan. You won't execute perfectly and get the results that you expect, or you built into plan. But there comes a point where you need to reset. Think this isn't working. What's plan B? Let's get plan B out, which in our case is always a sales playbook. That's always the plan B. If your individual plan isn't working, this is what good looks like. Let's get you back on track, and then agreeing those milestones along the way to get that performance back. So it's kind of not writing off everything that's happened. It's look, there's a gap, and we need to fill that gap. So if the KPI requirement is 10 and you've got a gap of 1, you need to do 11 or 12 in order to fill that gap. But then building that plan, but never a short-term plan. So there will be a short-term milestones, absolutely, but you can't expect somebody to go from 80% of plan to 100% of plan by the end of next month, maybe not even the end of next quarter. You have to build a realistic plan that has those progressive steps in there, and is built on applying the correct process and the correct disciplines as you go.
Mm. And is all of the learning, or the learning that you value most, this kind of very individualized learning? Or do you have like set programs? So I've joined your company, and you say, oh well, you can, we've got three different sales methodologies and three of these things, and you can pick the one you want and then go off and do it. Or is it much more kind of one-to-one and focused on my needs?
It's a real mixture of both. So we don't have a program that everybody goes through. We have programs or modules that cohorts of people would go through, and those cohorts, it's relevant to them, where they are on their journey, their knowledge and their skill set. And we used a sales capability assessment tool to help us get there. So we put the entire team through a sales capability assessment, got all of the combined results, and then just drew a line. And it was an arbitrary line that we as a leadership team came up with, and said, look, anybody below this score, we've got a learning and development need in that particular area for those individuals. Took all of the points that came out there, and all of the subjects that came out, worked with the learning and development organization, training organization, to help us build some modules that addressed all of those individual areas. Then put people into the cohorts and said, look, when we did the sales capability assessment, your score was lower than the average score. You are coming on to this learning and development module. Those with a higher score, we invited to come along to the learning and development module. And you know what, Adam? 90%
They
of those
all
people,
went.
90% of those optional invites actually attended the module despite having higher scores in those areas, which,
Do you know, that's really funny that you should say that, because my business partner, Tim, um, when he worked at Oracle, he said that one of the repeating patterns that he saw is that the people that always exceeded their target were people that always spent all of their training allowance every year. And I
yeah,
guess it's a mindset thing, isn't it? If you have a hungry, inquisitive mind, and you're prepared to sit down and say, I'm pretty good at this, but I need to be better, that's very different to folding your arms and going, I've been doing sales 47 years. You can't show me anything I don't know. And we all have an element of that in us, don't we?
yeah, it's a little more nuanced than that, Adam, because this wasn't about performance. This was done blind of any performance, any past
Mm.
previous performance metrics that were in there. This was solely on the sales capability assessment, how you
Right.
answered
Yeah.
the questions, what knowledge and skills you have in that particular area. That decided whether that module was fit for you and would be helpful to you. So we kind of had a relevant story to share with the sales community about why we thought these modules were appropriate, and why you should be, or why you are attending, and then to the other people that optional invite for them to attend. So we have that piece in place. We also have self-directed learning. in place. So we're members of the Institute of Sales Professionals. We've passed the Ethics and Sales exam. We have Investor in Sales Award, because people are engaging with that self-directed learning, choosing the content they feel most relevant to themselves, and putting the time aside to invest that hour, or to attend a webinar, go to a meeting, etc. So we've got those two strands in play, and that is separate to the mandatory learning that we need to do
Yeah.
around product, around competition, compliance, regulation, and all of that good stuff. So it's additive to that, but it's a different development track for people that they go down.
And has this worked as a strategy? Because it certainly should do. It's like but that doesn't always make it so.
Yeah, without revealing too many of the commercials, we're winning more larger deals than we've ever won as an
Brilliant.
organization. Our average order value in general is up. Our sales retention is incredibly high. Our customer retention is high. We're having a record-breaking year-on-year sales growth. There are a lot of positive indicators in just putting these and I say basics, not always easy. I'm fortunate to work in an organization that invested and backed us as a leadership team, that these were the correct things to do for our people, because it's not without investment. You have to invest, and
Absolutely.
it's not just time, there is financial investment. So fortunate enough to work in that environment. But yeah, can I put all of the improved results down to it? No, because we've done other things that we're not talking about in this session, which
Yeah.
sit in other areas. But this is just one of those things we've put in place. People are buying into. We've got very high engagement with the self-directed learning and the ISP. We see lots of people earning CPD points and accreditation through it. So yeah, people are buying into it.
And the people in your team are, I assume, feeling more confident and empowered as a result of this sort of behavior. The fact that they're learning more, they are feeling more confident. Their own personal brand is growing, and they're feeling like they're achieving. So what next? What next for these guys?
It's a journey. That there is no destination. We keep on doing it. We keep on putting the learning and development interventions in place. We run the sales capability assessment on an annual basis, and then look to see if there's any other themes that come out, and
So
help
it
people.
really is a continual development thing. This is not like putting the marker down as the starting point. This is like we're constantly going to be measuring to look for ways that we can improve.
Um, it, Yes, we can use the term measuring. It's more monitoring where are things, what progress has been
Yeah,
made.
yeah.
So if you look at this year's sales capability assessment versus the previous year, 14% improvement in scores. So the knowledge is becoming ingrained, is
Yeah, yeah.
becoming institutionalized within them, and they're able to develop and use that knowledge and skills. So yeah, it's a continuum. Absolutely, there is no destination. We just keep going and going.
Well, we're very nearly at time. So this has been fantastic, and it's really lovely to hear I guess what you could call a success story. So often what we see in our conversations with organisations is one of desperation. What we see is salespeople that are failing to meet their numbers, and the way that you try to drive them to more numbers is simply ratchet up the targets. Um, and, apply more pressure to the salespeople, whip them harder. As our chairman says, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Hmm.
It's this kind of attitude, and actually finding that the carrot is often a better motivator than the stick. I give you some skills, I empower you to use those skills, I give you the runway to deploy those skills in your job. Actually, this is a success story of doing the right thing, delivering the results that you want to get, and that's always wonderful to hear. So thank you very much indeed for joining us. Have you got any kind of closing thoughts or things that you would like to say to the audience?
Do it collaboratively. Don't sit in a darkened room as a leadership team, or as the senior man or woman on deck, and develop it. Do it collaboratively. Get get grassroots input and build it from the bottom up, so everybody buys into it, everybody understands where it's coming from. It's not some management nonsense, but yeah, it's important. Yeah,
What a lovely strapline. Grow your salespeople and they will grow your business. Perfect.
100%.
So, Chris, thank you very much indeed. Everyone in the audience, Peter, Neil, Arup, thank you all very much indeed for joining, and hopefully see you all next time. Until then, goodbye.